Welcome back, dearest wild web wanderers. Step inside, close the door behind you. Tonight, the cascade is restless and the air hums with potential. Before you stands a craft most developers merely dabble in. A little color tweak here, a shadow there, and they think they've mastered the arcane arts. But you are here for something deeper. You want to understand the runes beneath the reality, the symbols that let you reshape entire interfaces with a whisper. These aren't tricks, they aren't hacks. These are design tokens, archetypes, living variables that bend space, color, layout, and motion to your will. I am your guide, Professor Solo, Wizard of the Cascade and Keeper of the Root, and self-appointed guardian against bad CSS decisions. Once again, I've brought my rusted, trusted apprentice, T.A. Watts, excitable, knowledgeable, occasionally getting glitter on everything. Today, he's going to saunter you through the high-level teachings, and I'll be stepping in when the spells get spicy. So, prepare your mind, steady your wand. Tonight, we conjure CSS Variable Wizardry.
Hey there, Traveler of the Cascade, and welcome back. T.A. Watts here, and I'm ready to pull back the curtain on some serious web magic. All right, today we are leaving simple style sheets in the dust and stepping into our true roles as UI sorcerers. We're going to be talking about CSS variables, the secret runes that power all those modern, dynamic, and super maintainable design systems. It's time to level up your spellbook.
That is so right. The days of command F'ing your way through hundreds of lines of code just to change one color, yeah, those are over. From here on out, we command our styles with precision and with power.
Yes! Let the power cascade! If you've ever felt trapped by your own style sheet, twisting knobs, flipping switches, praying to the DevTools inspector, or hard-coding hexes like it's 2011, this lesson is your pass across the realm.
Okay, so here's the game plan for today. First, we'll cast our very first spell. Then, we'll get into the power of scope, brew up some dynamic themes, let JavaScript take the wand for a bit, and finally, we'll look at some performance enchantments. Let's dive in. All right, every great wizard has to start with the fundamentals, right? The basic runes. And for us, that means getting a solid grip on the core syntax of CSS variables. This is where all the magic really begins. Just look at this. On the left, we've got the old way, the painful way. It's a world of repetition. If you wanted to change that pink, you'd have to find and replace every single time you used it. But on the right, now that is the wizard's way. We define our brand color just once, and that change just ripples through the entire system, instantly. It's clean, it's maintainable, and it is so powerful.
So what are these magical things officially? Well, they're called CSS custom properties, but let's be real, everyone just calls them CSS variables. The easiest way to think about them is as named containers for your values, your colors, your spacing, maybe your font sizes. They're basically the core ingredients in your spellbook. So how do we actually use them? It's a super simple two-step process. First, you declare the rune. You give it a name, and hey, pro tip, it always has to start with 2 dashes, and then you give it a value. So here, we're setting our brand color. Step 2, you cast the spell. You just use the var function, and that tells the browser, hey, go look up the value for brand's color and slap it right here. Easy as that.
Quick note from a tired old wizard. The moment you understand var is the moment your CSS stops being decoration and starts becoming a system. Lean in. Watts is dropping real sorcery now.
Now, the key here is that root selector. Seriously, think of it as the master grimoire for all your styles. When you declare your variables inside root, you're basically making them global. They're accessible from literally anywhere on your page. This is the absolute foundation of any powerful design system. Okay, but it's not enough to just cast spells all over the place, right? A true wizard knows how to control where their magic actually takes effect. And that brings us to the power of scope.
Listen well. Scope is the difference between sorcery and chaos. New wizards dump everything into root and call it a day. Masters carve their magic into layers, global truths, regional flavors, component charms. Honor the cascade. Learn this art and you'll never fear refactoring your style sheet again.
And this visual just illustrates it perfectly. Here's our global grimoire in action. In this ingredient chamber, every single potion, we're talking the borders, the glow, the liquid, it's all powered by that small set of runes we defined back in root. If we change dash arcane accent just once, the entire lab, the whole thing, shifts in unison. Now that is what I call consistency.
But what if you need an exception? For that one single element that needs a different style. Well, that's where a local override comes into play. By just redefining the same variable on a more specific element, you change its value, but only for that element and anything inside it. So, for example, say you had a special section with a class like Sunfire Promo. You could just redefine dash brand color right inside that class. Boom. Now only that section uses the new color. Everything else, it just keeps inheriting the global value. That's the cascade working its magic.
Okay, so knowing when to use which scope is absolutely crucial. So here's a quick cheat sheet. Use root for your global design tokens. This is the core DNA of your site, your brand colors, spacing, fonts. Then use a section wrapper when you need to create a unique feel for a specific area, like that .sunfire promo we just talked about, or maybe a dark mode section. And finally, you can define variables directly on a component to give it some safe, sane defaults. That way it'll always look good, no matter where you decide to drop it.
All right, now that we've got a handle on runes and scope, let's get to the really fun part, brewing up entire dynamic themes with just a few lines of code.
This whole thing starts by building a proper palette of design tokens. So instead of just one brand color, we're going to define a whole system. Accent colors, background colors, border colors, text colors, the whole shebang. This collection of variables, things like arcane, accent, and page BG, it becomes the single source of truth for our entire UI's look and feel.
And here is the payoff. On the left, you see our default theme. Pretty standard. But on the right, bam, the Sunfire theme. So how'd we do this crazy dramatic change? Do we rewrite 100 CSS rules? Nope. We simply added a single class, .theme-sunfire, to a parent element. That one class contains the new values for our color variables, and the cascade just handles the rest. It's instant, it's predictable, and it is an incredibly powerful way to do theming.
Behold, the Sunfire transmutation, achieved not through toil or repetition, but through variable alchemy. This is where you stop painting paragraphs and start architecting worlds.
Now, this class-based theming is awesome, but it's still kind of static, right? What if we want to change themes based on what the user does, like clicking a button? Well, for that level of dynamic control, we need to hand the wand over to JavaScript.
Okay, and this is maybe the most important concept to really get. We are not going back to the old days of writing element.style.color equals red. No way. Instead, our JavaScript's only job, its only job, is to update the values of our CSS variables. All the styling logic, it stays right where it belongs, in the CSS.
Exactly. JavaScript is the messenger, not the decorator. If you're still cramming styles into your JS, come sit by the fire and let me fix your style choices. Ne'er more shall we write style color equals red in the wild. Or, by the neon style overlords, I shall revoke your wand license.
Think of it this way. JS just changes the ingredient. CSS is still the one making the cake.
And interacting with these variables from JavaScript is actually really straightforward. To read a variable's current value, you're going to use getComputedStyle and propertyValue. To change it, you just use element.style.setProperty. You give it the variable name, you give it the new value, and boom. The change is instantly reflected everywhere that variable is being used.
And here we can see that principle in action. We've got this theme console with 3 buttons, Aqua, Sunfire, and Violet. When you click one of those buttons, a little JavaScript function runs, and all it does is call setProperty to update the dash potion liquid and dash potion glow variables on the root element. And just like that, the beakers, the wand, the entire lab, it just reskins itself instantly. And it's all because the CSS is just sitting there, listening for those variables to change.
Notice something, travelers? One subtle nudge to the variables, and the entire lab transforms. This is the heart of modern UI sorcery. Touch one token, transform the world.
So we've covered theming and interactivity, but the magic does not stop there. CSS variables are also a secret weapon for creating those silky smooth, high-performance animations we all love.
This slide here shows off a really powerful technique, the unitless variable. Just notice that dash shadow strength is just a number, 0.45. There are no pixels, no rems, nothing. So we can then use this inside other functions like calc or RGBA or even clamp to create these really cool responsive values. Like, for example, a box shadow that uses RGBA with our dash shadow strength variable. This basically turns our variable into a dynamic intensity dial.
Gather close. This is where many spellcasters burn down their own tower. Layout thrashing, slow lane animations. GPU misery. Watts is about to show you the path. From stuttering incantations to smooth 60 frames per second wizardry.
Now, for high performance, it is critical to understand that not all CSS properties are created equal. Animating properties in the slow lane, like width or margin, forces the browser to recalculate the layout and repaint everything constantly. It's super expensive. But the fast lane properties, like transform and opacity, those are handled by the GPU, which is way faster. So when we combine them with our little intensity dials, say animating a scale factor variable from 1 to 1.2, the browser only has to update that one simple value, and what you get is incredibly smooth 60 frames per second animations.
Remember this well. Variables aren't just values. They're levers, controls, the interface between intent and expression. Master the levers, and you master motion.
So let's do a quick recap of the new powers you now have in your spellbook. Your styles are now reusable because you define a value once and use it everywhere. They're maintainable. You can update one variable and change the entire UI. They're dynamic, letting you change themes and styles with either CSS or JavaScript. And they're performant, giving you that smooth control over animations with those intensity dials.
Look, you've learned the runes, you've mastered the scope, and you've taken the wand. You now have the tools to build user interfaces that are more creative, more maintainable, and way more magical than ever before. So the only question left is, what are you going to create? I really hope you'll join me next time. We're going to trade our wand for a drafting table and meet the architect of space as we dive deep into modern layouts with Flexbox and Grid.
Until then, this is Tay Watts. P.S. Keep learning.
Well, that, Code Companions, completes the chapter. You've learned the runes, the design tokens, the primitives that shape reality. You've mastered scope, summoned themes, and enchanted motion. You have shown the wand who's in charge. From this point forward, your CSS is no longer a list of rules. It's a living system you can guide, evolve, and reshape with elegance. Contrary to what Watts just said, our next journey is going to be into CSS selector spells, an incantation-packed journey into targeting, precision, and structured sorcery. And after that, CSS Function Forge, where we hammer raw values into dynamic intelligent systems. I'm Professor Solo. May your variables always resolve. P.S. Thou shalt pass!